How to start a Shopify business in 2025. This is a full course. It's going to be absolutely free, but this is going to be literally everything you need to know. When you start this video, no matter what your skill level is, by the end of the video, you'll not only be able to start your own Shopify business, but you'll have an expert knowledge on what you need to do and what people in the industry that are having success are doing. You might ask yourself, who the heck is this guy to tell me? One, I'm somebody that's been doing this on my own for the last 6 years of my life. Might not sound like a lot, but I've had multiple iterations of businesses that are successful to this day, to the point that they're so successful that I'm not going to tell you much about them because I don't want the competition. I think that's one of those clear things that you watch all these creators that are like, this is my business, this is what I'm doing. The reality is they're probably not making a ton of money actually on it, and probably most of the revenue isn't profit, because if it was profit, they wouldn't want to share it with you. Yeah, I'm stingy. Don't take my money. I have other videos on it where I talk about some of the money and there's screenshots and the things, but you're just going to have to believe me because two, I've done this for other companies as my day job. So I've run Shopify businesses and e-com businesses as my side hustle. Unfortunately, I'm at the point right now where I could do it full time if I wanted to, but my day job has been very product based as an engineer and as a consultant on the business side of products. And it's been something that I've been doing for large companies, as far as going as saying I've been doing it for like Fortune 500. So I can tell you what large companies are doing. I can tell you what small companies are doing. I can tell you what individuals are doing. And that's why this course is probably going to be one of the most valuable courses that you're going to have ever watched if you have any interest in Shopify business or e-com businesses, and we're going to get into it. Yeah, this is going to be a long video. So a couple things that you can do. One, notepad. Two, popcorn and something to drink, maybe a little bit of caffeine. And three, if you really want to, you can hit like the 2x button if you really want to, for me to go faster, which is totally okay, but I'm not going to cut any corners in this video. So if you're looking for a super concise video, one, you probably shouldn't start a Shopify business at all or get into the e-com, because this is a hard thing to do, and there is a lot of information that I got to give to you guys so you guys can be successful. So you got to be able to put in the work and the effort. And I'm going to go one step further and say, if you're not going to take notes in this video, you're probably going to fail at the get-go. So yeah, notepad, 100% you should do it. But yeah, it's gonna be one of those kinds of videos. I'll guarantee, I can't really, it's not like you're paying me or anything, but I can guarantee you're gonna crush it after this. All right, let's start. Again, we're gonna go over absolutely everything that you might need to know. So some of these things are gonna be boring, some of them are gonna be not, but if you're gonna actually go do this, none of it will be boring. So number one step. So depending on where you are in the United States, it's all about risk tolerance, but I would say step number one is registering a business, specifically an LLC. I do this for all my businesses because it separates my personal income and wealth and money from the business in case somebody sues me. The more business that you do, the more risk you expose yourself to getting sued. It might sound crazy, but if you actually do something that's successful and you plan for success, you want to make sure somebody doesn't sue you and take everything that's in your bank account or your house or everything that you've earned, and they're just suing the business and the LLC. So although this can be expensive up front, it's again risk tolerance. I think a lot of people don't do it, and I kind of didn't do it before I started selling stuff, and I kind of sold enough stuff to pay for the LLC because I'm in a state where the LLC costs more. It's like $600 where I live. So this is something that you can or can't do. I would generally recommend spending the money and buying an LLC, but I will give you guys the rundown of what I did to kind of pay for that LLC in the video, because I think that's a crucial point of how to start the business. So we'll talk about that. So just stay a little bit further, but step one is at least research starting an LLC and what's involved, getting your EIN and doing everything, basically setting up the core. Number two is watching a video like this where you basically understand the entirety of the system. You need to understand your infrastructure of your business. You need to understand your sales environment, your product environment, your marketing environment, and how all those four things kind of interact, which in this video we will talk about and you will learn. But a lot of people think that they know what is actually happening behind the scenes and how all this works, but they don't. And I'll go one step further. A lot of actual creators and content creators around e-com businesses have no idea what they're talking about. And anyone that does this for a living like I do watches those videos and you're just like, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. And more often than not, when they show you that $1 million number on Shopify and they're like, this is my proof, it's just revenue, or they've taken a loss and they've recouped that loss by making money through YouTube, and that loss actually is just an offset on their taxes as content creation. So there's a lot of things to be said there, but you need to step two is understanding how all those systems work and actually planning them out, right? So a lot of setting this up is going to be planning, and I'm going to go through how to plan it, right? But planning is 90% of the work and execution is 10% of the work. And if you've done the planning well, that 10% execution is going to be statistically successful, right? It's not going to be successful every time. We'll talk about it eventually, but you'll be able to iterate through that 10%, but 90% of your work is, front loaded. So step number 3, we're going to stop saying the step numbers. We're just going to say the next step because there's going to be so many of them, is doing your back end infrastructure. So a lot of the time I like to say go product first, but I'm realizing that the infrastructure part of ecom is changing. So you have different options between drop shipping and housing your own product. I'll be honest, housing your own product is the way to go. Your margins are higher. It gives you more options for success. Your startup is a little bit slower. Your numbers are slower, but honestly, the proportion of margins from like housing your own products to drop shipping, like to give you perspective, every business that I've ever started and at a large scale, like one sale of housed product, like if it's stored in your house or whatever, if you make one sale, it's the equivalent profit of like, if you're drop shipping, probably like 25 sales. You might say to yourself, that sounds crazy, but that's just where margins are right now. And like maybe you're gonna get lucky and hit the lottery, or somebody's telling you that that's not the case, but that's industry standard. So I don't know what they're talking about, and they may have been really lucky, and you might be lucky too, but you're asking yourself to hit 2 lotteries. This is a hard business to work in, so that's a lottery if you succeed. And then to get a special product that nobody else can seem to get, that's a second lottery. And winning the lottery twice is almost impossible. So building your backend infrastructure is really important. In this video, we're going to focus on non-drop shipping because I truly think that's the way to go, and that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years. I do a little bit of drop shipping, but it's like 5% of my business. The majority of it, like actually behind you guys right now, I got the camera right here, but there are literal shelves all across my office full of products. You guys can't see it because I've cut it off, but below me are bins and bins and bins and bins and bins of different products. So I store most of my stuff. My basement full of products. I'm not big enough right now that I, let's say, store enough that I need a warehouse, but I'm still making as much money as somebody that would be drop shipping from a warehouse with a warehouse worth of goods because my margins are so high because I've done the business right. And if you're wondering what those numbers are, you could easily generate 6 figures out of your home without ever having a warehouse. Easy. So what's the back end? Okay, so you need to understand your point of contact and data, which is typically setting up an email. That might sound weird, but like that's actually really important. Opening a Microsoft account, I use Outlook. So I create an Outlook, I create a Microsoft account, but the first thing before I do that, because it gets cheaper if you do it, is website. I create a domain, a web domain. I have to know what my niche is. So you want to plan generally what your niche is going to be. That's something I can't really tell you because that's going to be very personal to you. As you select your niche, pick a niche that you're passionate about. It's the easiest to like create content on, be passionate about, learn about. So pick a niche that you're passionate about or you have some knowledge about or you don't hate. And then we're gonna grab a domain. The actual name of the domain and the name of the business is less important, right? But just grab a domain, plan the name of the business relative to the niche. It doesn't have to be overly specific. Mine hasn't been overly specific. The day of indexing and ranking on Google based on your name of your business it's not as important as it used to be. It's actually not important at all, really. It adds so little value. The content is actually much more important. So pick a business name, register it, buy the domain name. When you're doing that, if you're using like HostGator or whatever it is, the reason I'm not going to give you a specific site to actually buy the domain and get hosting is because it's really going to change, and you actually don't need hosting because we're going to use Shopify, but buying the domain specifically, it's just going to change on sales. I would take advantage of a sale. Just Google like buy domain and someone's going to have a sale and it's going to be the cheapest over a certain amount of years. Just get the one on sale. It's the easiest thing to do. And then you're going to go over to Shopify. You're going to start with the free plan, and you're going to eventually go to the basic plan because that's really all you need. And then you're just going to link your domain name. And when you're buying your domain, and this is where it gets important with the email, you'll usually get discounted business email access, which is most places offer. And you'll get a business suite through Microsoft, get an Outlook email. That's really easy to do. You could do a Google, but I think the integration for Microsoft Suite and the other products that they have just are really powerful. You can also use Google on top of that. That's what I do. And the Microsoft business email is so cheap, and it's like almost cheap access to like online Word, online Excel, other things that you might use in your business. You don't want to like find out later that you need access to. And again, with that discount that you might get bundling it ends up being really cheap. I think I pay like $7 a month, and it's outside of the promotion for my email, which is really, really good for the size of my business right now. Once we have our email set up, our domain purchase, we're going to set up our like back-end infrastructure of Shopify. We're just going to go as far as setting up the homepage, the contact page, the terms of service. We're going to copy stuff in, basically all non-product specific stuff. You don't really need to know what you're selling at this point, but you're getting all this work done. What we're doing here is we're overloading the process of getting the majority of the work done prior to the product selection process, because the product selection process is the most mental work, and we want to kind of clear our workload. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but that's just the most efficient way of doing it. But it will also give you kind of the workflow to quickly go from product to test to product to test and test and test and test, versus having to like get into the product, breaking the workflow, then going back and doing the infrastructure and testing. You're not gonna hit your first product. You're gonna have to test. So we wanna have this infrastructure that we can just run tests through. So we've built our Shopify site. We might not have a landing page yet. We might not have a perfect product page yet, but now we're at the place where we can start understanding what are we gonna sell, how are we gonna sell it, and what's our long-term goal. A lot of people jump too far into it at this point. They jump to, what's my product? How am I gonna sell it, right? You wanna understand, do you want a business where you're gonna be advertising? Do you want a business where you're gonna be doing organic index-based like advertising or customer attraction, or do you want a business based on content? So those are the kind of the three ways to do it. Advertising is pay-per-click or paid media. It's basically you're spending money to get in front of customers. This is the most common at a large scale and the least common at a small scale. The reason it's least common at a small scale is it costs money to do. I actually run all my e-com businesses without spending a cent on ads. The way that I do that is I personally run mine on content-based businesses. I put a lot of effort into making content, both for YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and I make my own content, and I'll give you a strategy on how to do that, but it costs me absolutely nothing to advertise. I've spent $0 on advertising on a business that's generated, multiple six figures over the last 3-4 years, and I've been able to do that and have really, really high margins because I have no ad spend, right? And it's a beautiful thing, but it's easier said than done. It takes a lot of effort to make content. So I'm kind of like putting my work in over advertising, but I have margins that were worth making content. The other option is to, compete in a space where it's very index-based. Let's say you're very passionate about SEO and you want to create a website where it's going to be very driven about just being the first product that shows up if you're Googling it. So let's say you have less of a niche product and you have something where you're like, I'm going to compete with paper towels, right? Which is, don't do that. But let's just say an example of somebody's like, I need to buy paper towels. And you're like, I'm just going to Google paper towels. That's a bad example. Let's say like tripods or something. Like I buy a tripod, right? You're just going to base your business on being the first tripod that shows up in a Google search. This is the hardest one. This applies to like 1%, probably less of like niche areas. But I mention it because every once in a while you will have somebody that's really passionate about something that is just like a mainstream consumable material product. And you're gonna have a hard time competing where it's not index-based. And you wanna almost like set your entire business based on making sure you rank really high, which with the other two options, you honestly won't until you get to a very massive scale, versus like the indexing one, you're gonna be doing a lot of blog activity, you're gonna be doing a lot of internal SEO, and those are things that are good to focus on with the other two approaches, but they're not as important. So once you've decided on which approach you wanna do, and the real question, if you're asking yourself, what do I wanna do? It's, do you have extra money to spend on ads? Or are you willing to go into debt to spend on ads? If the answer is no to either of those things, the next question is, and this is basically the only question because I really wouldn't do the indexing, the middle option. The next question is, how comfortable are you making content and spending your time instead of spending your money? So your time obviously costs you your time, but it's free to do, right? So those are your two options. You got to pick which ones are for you. And if neither of those options are comfortable, it's not the business for you. There isn't another option. You either spend to get in front of people and you spend real money out of your pocket up front. You don't have any money right now, so you got to be able to float that money or take debt on, like real debt. We're talking about many thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. Or you're willing to get behind a camera and put a lot of work out and put yourself out there, right? Those are the two options. That's how you're gonna find success in this business. So once you pick one of those things, the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna niche down on your product niche, which means, that sounds kind of silly, but what you're gonna do is you're going to make a decision on, first off, you've picked one niche. You're gonna say, what do I wanna sell? And the first question is, what do I want to be an expert in? No matter whether or not you're going to be spending on ads or whether you're going to be making educational content on the product that you're selling, you're going to have to be an expert in whatever you sell. Inherently, right? You're selling it, right? You have to be an expert into it. So you need to choose then a specific like product line or group of products within that niche that you've picked that you're comfortable saying, I'm gonna master that area. I'm gonna know every single thing about those things for the next 10 years of my life, right? And that might sound scary because you're like Googling online, like e-com businesses, and people are like, I sold these like teddy bears and made $1 million. Probably didn't, but if they did, they were gambling, right? Do you want to gamble? Because if you do, you should just go to the casino. You shouldn't start a business, right? I mean, it's the same thing, right? Full stop. Like if you want that result, just go bet on black on a roulette table. There's no difference, right? And actually, if you bet on black on a roulette table, you have a heck of a lot more of a chance of winning than betting on a random teddy bear and getting sales, right? So like what people are talking about like that, it just doesn't exist in the world. Most people aren't doing it. Actually, almost nobody is doing it. So you need to become an expert on this. We're gonna use photography as our example for this video just because it's easy to talk about and it's like you could compete in the niche. Unfortunately, I'm not going to talk about the niches that I compete in right now because they pay my mortgage and I do not want competition. So please stay away from the businesses that I currently own. So let's make the decision that we're going to go into tripods, because that's an example. Now, when I'm choosing a product, I want something that is mainstream enough that people are buying it and purchasing it, but niche enough that it's not the most common thing in the world. I don't want to pick something that you have to like educate people about, right? If it's a product that everybody doesn't know, you not only have to convince them to buy it, but you also have to spend money to convince them or to educate them on what that product is. You don't have to fight two battles here. We're not trying to like re-educate somebody. We just want to convince them that your product is the best when they're looking at a range of products that they're already going to buy. And that's the magic key here. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're just trying to compete. And when you're trying to compete, you can do things. You can outwork somebody in competing and find success. So let's say it's gonna be tripods, right? We're gonna then go and we're gonna learn everything we can about tripods. Okay, so the next step is going to be sourcing our tripods or sourcing our products. And you might notice things are a little bit different. This is day 2 of filming because it's taken me so long to film this video and there's so much to be said in this video. So day 2 of filming. But the next step is actively sourcing our tripods or preparing the kind of sourcing and product selection step. So what we're gonna do once we've identified that we're gonna work within the tripod realm, what we're gonna do is a couple things. First off, we're gonna do proper product selection. Now I've got a multitude of videos on this channel, but to take it at a very brief but actionable kind of overview of what you need to do is you need to pick products that are pick products that are in demand or compete with in-demand products. You need to pick products that are relatively affordable. You don't want to be on the higher end of the spectrum. And then you want to take those products and either improve upon them slightly or make them significantly cheaper. Those are your two options. I always go the cost approach, right? I try to source competitive products and undercut the price by not just like a couple cents, right? By 20, 30, or 40% and still make dollars on it. You might ask, that sounds impossible. It is absolutely not impossible, and you just have to kind of keep iterating until you can find that happen. So if I were you, or if I were in these shoes, I'd be looking at a few tripods that are doing really well. I'm looking at Amazon data, I'm looking at sales data, I'm looking at blog posts, I'm going into Facebook groups and understanding what people are using, and then I'm going on to specifically Alibaba and AliExpress, and I'm starting to look at what's available, and I'm starting to reach out to suppliers and ask for price lists, catalogs, everything in between. And I'm getting the real cost to kind of start sourcing this. You need to take this step because the price that you see on Alibaba is not the price that you're actually going to get it. Often what I found is you can 2x that price, and that's the landed cost. But you need to understand things like minimum order quantity and other aspects of what you might have to pay for, whether there's taxes, import fees, whatever it is that you might have to pay for to acquire those products. So unfortunately, the product selection isn't just about picking a cool product, it's about creating a minimal viable business case. And I think that's a bit of a letdown for a lot of people because they want to like pick this cool product to sell and they want it to be cool and creative, and it comes down to math, unfortunately, and you need to have enough profit margin on your product. So what you need to do in terms of kind of product selection is you need to be able to find, and this is the golden rule, if you're gonna sell something for, let's say, $100, right? You need to be able to source that product probably for under $25 landed to you, right? That's the golden rule of thumb. It gets a little bit trickier when your products become $50, $40, $30 because you've got less margin, and it's not just about margin at that point, it's about the amount of dollars that you're gonna make in profit to the amount of work that you have to do to actually sell the product. So it changes a little bit. But I typically wanna source my products at 25% the cost of the products that customers are already buying, and that is the landed cost. Honestly, the most success that I've found, and I've never actually gone to market for something that is over 16% of it. The highest product that I ever competed with, I pay 16% of the land, like my landed cost is 16% of the MSRP for my competitor. Now again, not every product's gonna have this. I would actually go as far as saying 90% of products have been optimized, meaning that everyone under the sun is doing this process, so you need to do it until you find a product where this works. And then you can start building a product line and yada, yada, yada. But that's our process of product selection. It's finding something you're passionate about that's selling. We're using both data from real large marketplaces, but we're also getting entrenched in the groups on Facebook and on Reddit and understanding what people are using. And then we're getting an idea of products. But we're not gonna pull the trigger just yet. Now we have to do our actual market and customer research. We need to get into every place that we're going to derive our first sales. This is where some of the effort comes in because this process takes a little bit longer, right? I've always opted towards, instead of wasting money iterating through products through advertisements, being a B2C direct-to-consumer salesperson, right? A lot of gurus are going to tell you pick a product, put it on your page, run some ads and see if it works. And you can do that, right? But most successful people, individuals, and big companies actually don't do that. They take an approach, and obviously the larger the company, the more this is scaled, but they take more of a direct-to-consumer approach in terms of testing. They don't just run ad spend to see if it will sell, right? There's this entire A to B and business case testing and yada, yada, yada. There's so much to be said there, but we're going to take the approach that everyone's doing in success, and it's a little bit more effort, but you'll lower your money waste and your risk, and potentially you'll be able to find success before you run out of money, right? Because that's just what it is. If you're running ads that you're not sure are going to return any money, you're going to lose that money. So you're going to get into every Facebook group. Like if you're doing tripods, again, I'm going to get into every single photography Facebook group. And not only am I going to get into them, I'm going to start getting active in them. I'm going to comment on things. I'm going to like things. I'm going to say things. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to become a known entity. Same thing with Reddit, but specifically Facebook groups. That's going to be our biggest start place. And I know that might sound really confusing, but again, this is how we're going to start. We're not going to be running $100,000 of TikTok ads or $250,000 of Instagram ads just yet because you don't have $100,000 or $250,000. So we got to generate some income. So we're going to utilize Facebook, right? I'll be honest, my entire business still only runs on Facebook. Yeah, sounds crazy, but I'm making 6 figures on Facebook. So hate me. I also spend nothing on ads. What I'm about to tell you to do, and what I'm telling you to do is what I do every day. I've just decided not to ever graduate to the next step of paying for ads because I love my healthy profit margins. But the next step is you're going to be ingrained in these communities. Your goal is with these very high traffic, large Facebook groups that you become a known name. That's not going to happen overnight. That's not going to happen in a week. It's going to take, 6 to 8 weeks of being very active across all of these groups to become a known name. What you're doing here is a combination of research into what you're doing, but most importantly, you're building trust behind your name, right? This is going to allow that trust to go in many different directions for the rest of your business. Once you've kind of fully ingrained yourself, you've learned a lot more about the product, you've become an expert in that time because you're trying to provide free information, you're doing research to answer questions, you're asking questions, you're creating all this buzz in the community, right? Then the next step is to finally do some soft product launches. So in this case, we're going to have done our business case research. We're going to say, okay, this is after that 6 weeks. I think that there's room to compete with these tripods. You're going to find a similar tripod on Alibaba. You're going to reach out to the manufacturer. You're going to get a price list. You're going to get a quote for delivery, and you're going to order 50 units, right? And you're going to tell them this is just kind of a market entry order, right? You're going to pay a little bit more, obviously, because you're ordering a smaller quantity. And what you're going to do is you're going to direct to consumer within the Facebook groups that you've ingrained yourself in. You're going to sell those direct to consumers. So you're going to bring that product in. You're going to take all your copy, meaning you're going to take all your photos for your website. You're going to create a product page on Shopify. It's really easy to do. It's really self-explanatory. I'm not playing that BS game of it's got to be perfect, right? If you do product selection good and you have a good level of trust around who you are for this initial stage, it really doesn't matter what your landing page looks like. As long as you look at your landing page and be like, I'd press the buy button, that's good enough, right? Optimizing it to this crazy extent isn't as important when we're not throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars of ad spend and trying to make a slight conversion, which will be the difference between profit and not, right? That's not the goal here. So we're gonna skip this step. Basic product page. You can even use a default product page template that Shopify offers. And we're going to take our 50 units and then we're going to go back into the Facebook groups that we've been very, very active in for weeks and weeks and weeks, right? And we're going to do a couple things, and we're going to test things across different Facebook groups. We might have some Facebook groups, like 30% of them, we're going to say, hey, my name is this, been active in the community for a long time. For the last couple months, I've been developing my own, startup, and, I've developed this product, and, I'm doing a soft launch. Would anyone like to support the product, right? We're going to try that. We're going to copy that in another 30% of the groups, and we're going to say the same thing, but we're going to edit and say, I'm looking for initial testers of the product. I'm willing to give 50% discount, yada, yada, yada. If we bought our products at the right price, as I discussed, a 50% discount, you're still profiting on it, but you're paying down that unit cost that you initially had, right? So although you might not be making as much units, you're just clearing inventory right now. You're bringing money back into your pocket. You're getting you're checking all your systems. You're doing everything you need to do. And because you're an expert in this, when people ask questions, like they're like, what tripod are you using, right? You're responding, I'm using this tripod, and you're linking your site. Maybe you say, and I'm the owner, happy to give you a custom discount, right? You're creating this human factor and you're selling direct to consumer. If you've done your product research correctly, you're gonna sell your products, right? And if you haven't done your products research correctly and you can't sell your products, paying ads or spending money on ads to then sell them isn't going to solve the problem. It's just going to make you lose a lot on ads. And that's something that I don't think anyone in this industry really talks about, is if you can't speak to somebody and have the human aspect of it and sell your product, they're absolutely not going to buy it when it just shows up on an ad reel, right? I mean, it's amazing that people don't talk about that, and any guru that doesn't understand that, they're not actually doing what they're preaching. What's the beautiful thing about selling those first 50 units direct to consumer? One, it might take some time, but two, if you sell them all or you sell most of them, what have you done here? Number one, beyond putting money in your pocket, is shown proof that you did good product selection, right? If it was really, really, really hard to sell those 50 units, right? If it took months of hard work to sell those 50 units, scrap that product and try something new, right? It just didn't work, right? But if you can spend really hard work and sell those 50 units in a couple weeks, direct to consumer, right? You've proven to yourself that you've got a good product, right? Or you probably have a good product. You were able to sell it with the human aspect, right? And that's something that's like a cheat code, right? Being a person-to-person sales, like, it's easier to sell stuff than to have someone scroll over an Instagram ad and buy something. It's much easier when there's a human being convincing you to buy the product, right? The second thing is, with those 50 units, what you've done is you've actually put a little bit of money in your pocket. So after those 50 units, you've paid down a lot of your costs, right? You've paid off the cost of the 50 units. You've paid off probably all of your costs leading up to this, to set up the Shopify, to set up your email, to buy your domain. You've paid off all your costs. And hopefully you haven't generated a lot, but you've generated just a wee bit more money so that you can go and do the same exact process again. Now, here's where you can kind of breach out. If you're really confident and it was really easy to sell that 50 units and you have some extra money, instead of rinsing this process again and buying 100 units and doing the same, you can take the next step and buy 1,000 units and do the same thing while starting to run ads, right? But this is going to take substantial money, both for the 1,000 units, and ads are very, very expensive. We'll talk about pricing products and how much ad spend you need to be successful and all that stuff later in this video. But the big step here is you can either rinse and repeat and increase and double your inventory every time. That's for sure going to take the longer thing. If you sell 50 units and then you're like, I'm going to sell 100 units and I'm going to sell 200 units and I'm going to sell 250 units and kind of rinse and repeat the process, it's going to take a lot of effort and time, but you have very, very low financial risk and you will be bringing money in. To be completely transparent with you guys, that's what I did for a year and a half to start this business, right? I knew that with my business, I wanted to have 65, 70 products on my site, and I'm gonna have to do this. And to have that many products and not do them individually, I need money, right? And I don't wanna take a lot of risk. I really, like, that hard-earned money allows me to take the risk of having many products and some of the products not hitting versus having to do one product at a time, and maybe one fail and I lose everything, right? So for a year and a half, I was selling direct to consumer and paying all my costs and making sure this entire journey set me up. But what I was able to do is in that first 18 months, right? I went from 1 to like 4 products selling to direct consumer, and then from 18 months to 24 months, I went to 55 products, right? And you know how I did that? I had the money to do it and take risks with money that I had in my bank account, right? Which is such a powerful thing. The other thing is, because I had the income, because I was grinding through making money, although it wasn't a lot of money, I had no debt through the entire process, which means I could take bigger risks, both with my time and my money, than somebody that was maybe $15,000 in a hole because one ad spend campaign didn't work. And yeah, that's the margins. That would be light, right? Like if you have one ad spend campaign that didn't work for a week, 15 grand in the hole is if you're lucky, right? You could easily sink more than that in the e-com world. You're gonna rinse and repeat this process. And as you bring more money in, you've got two routes. You either take the next step and you buy like 1,000 units because you think that there's a business case for that and you're willing to take that risk, or you keep doing this process and you iterate through it and you add products and you continue, and then you eventually get to the point where you're like, this product has had so much success, I'm gonna go from taking 40% profit to 5% profit, and I'm gonna try to sell 50,000 of them, right? Because that's the next step. When you run ads, you're doing volume. You take a tiny bit of the profit that you had before and you spend the rest of your profit spending it on ads to get in front of people, and you hope to take a tiny bit, but do a lot of volume for it to pay you back, right? So you can either take that step or you can continue to iterate. Honestly, the iteration process was so successful for me, and in this process of like selling direct to consumer, I created my own content, which I then put on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, and that organically brought customers in. And I've gone through this like iterative process, and I found a manufacturer that supports that. And I've gone through this iterative process for the entire 6-year career of my current business. And I buy my products at like 200 unit allotments, and I probably buy them once a month, but it keeps my risks low. It brings money in. My manufacturer, I'm so regular at this point, I'm putting like 2 orders in a month that he doesn't care, right? Yeah, it's a little extra packaging. I pay for it, but I'd rather not take the risk and not have a ton of inventory and have all those risks, and I make plenty of money and I'm happy about it, right? So those are your two approaches. So you might ask yourself, well, hang on, you just mentioned that you were creating content. So if you don't go the route of paid media and the risk of spending money, which is one of those routes that we will again eventually talk about, because I don't think that's the best course of action, but you could do that if you wanted to. The other option is to continue this iterative approach of direct-to-consumer sales. Now, at some point, selling to people in these Facebook groups you're going to hit the total effort that you can get in and get out of it, right? Because you're going to be like 40 hours a week working with people, studying, like commenting, posts, answering questions, messaging, and a lot of it, you're not like selling, you're actively promoting, you're giving people free education, and you're kind of plugging your business on the back end, and that's what's generating the sales. That's the best way to find success doing that. You might actually find out that you're going to hit a plateau where it doesn't return anything. And then you say to yourself, well, half of my effort here is creating free education around photography or tripods or what you should use or comparisons or how tripods work, that I'm going to start making content around it. And this is where you have to get scrappy and get comfortable putting yourself out there. You're then going to start creating YouTube videos, Instagram Reels, and TikTok videos, and you're going to start posting the content. And it's not going to be successful at first, but you're going to keep doing it, and you're going to fight for keywords that are low competition, specifically around your product niche. You're not going to try to blow up. You're not looking for a million, person channel, right? You're looking to be the expert in exactly what you sell. You might say, well, wouldn't it be better to get 1 million subscribers? That's an entirely different business, right? I can be honest with you. I've got a YouTube channel that supports my business. It doesn't have that many subscribers. I'm probably nearing 20,000 subscribers right now. And that might not sound like a lot after like 5 or 6 years of work, but I get like 150,000 targeted views that are looking at my products every single month, and I don't pay anything for them. In fact, I actually get a kickback from Google AdSense for that, like for advertising. So I get paid for those views, and on top of it, it's targeted media. And not only that, is it those 150,000 views that I get per month are more targeted than if I spent to get in front of 150,000 people online. And I've actually done tests, right? So those 150,000 views, which pay me like $600 or $700 a month in Google AdSense, right, pays me and brings in money for my business. If I were to replicate the amount of sales that I get out of that representative view block, I'm looking at spending between $10,000 and $25,000 a month in ad spend, right? So all of a sudden, this entire thing kind of breaks apart. Now, I've gotten lucky. I honestly don't think that I've gotten lucky, because I've just iterated and kind of revised and done a lot of work. I'm not some instant success. It's been very linear growth, unfortunately, but I'm doing linear growth intentionally. I don't want to take the risk of maybe having that exponential growth. I'm happy just being linear. Like, I'd love to just grow long term, right? And as I produce more content, it gets organic, blah, 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 blah. So what you're going to do is you're going to continue your continue your crusade on Facebook groups, and then you're going to start creating content, and you're just going to rinse and repeat this for as long as you want and can. And while the content you create at first is going to have very, very low ROI, what you're doing is you're actually putting the work up front for stuff that will grow and basically do the work for you long term. The best videos that I've produced that have returned the most sales are videos that for the first year after me putting them out there returns maybe a couple $100s in sales, right? And then they hit the curve of, when people asked a question, my video showed up because Google indexed it and it started ranking. And, one video I can tell you specifically in the first, I want to say, and I'm trying to remember the numbers exactly, but ballpark, the first year I generated probably like $150, $160 in sales, and year 2 I think I generated like $25,000, $30,000 of sales, just because it started ranking and indexing for that one question that a customer might ask, and my product was plugged for the solution, and I provided free education to how to solve that problem. So you're gonna do that, right? And then eventually your business will have made enough money that you get to either start being lazy and pull back and run ads, or you kind of continue and repeat it. Honestly, I prefer the iterative approach in creating content. I think that's where you're gonna find the most success, and you're actually, honestly, that's the lowest risk. You have the highest chance of success doing that because you're putting in the effort. But if you want to take yourself out of the equation, you can start running ads. Here's the problem. When you run ads, I typically say that that's going to increase your product cost to you upwards of 30 to 40%. So let's say your product is $100 landed to you. We're just using a round number. I would typically expect to sell that product with a paid ad regardless of where you're spending your money. Then the product's going to cost you like $130 to $140 before you even start to ship it and send it out to your customer. So you're losing a pretty significant portion of your profit margin. So if your profit margin is 50% because you're doing organic content, if you're not paying any money or spending money on ads, and you run ads, my guess is your profit margin is probably going to go down to 5 or 10%, right? So that means for every product that you sell with a paid ad, right, you need to sell, let's say 4 or 5 of them to have the same return on one sale if you were creating your own content and doing your own direct to consumer sales. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that's just giving you an idea of what that looks like, especially if you're running a business where you're housing a lot of your inventory, which I also highly recommend. Dropshipping numbers are getting ridiculous where it's so hard to make money via dropshipping that housing your own product is also very powerful, right? And then you have some assets around your business that if you ever wanted to sell your business, you could sell the intellectual property of the business itself, and the assets with it at a prorated rate. Having stock is always pretty much a good thing. It adds a little bit of risk, but it's generally a good thing. And you get to control your own stock levels, where if you're running ads and you're playing at that volume, you might have to fill up half your house with boxes because, again, it's a 5-to-1 ratio, or that's what it's been historically for me and for most businesses. If I'm already selling 1,000 units a month, for one thing, if I have to go up to selling 5,000 units a month to have the equivalent results, right? And that's equivalent, right? If you want to find success with paid media, maybe you double that. So you might go from storing 1,000 units to 10,000 units a month. Think about all the time it takes on your end, on your side, to check all those when they come in, to organize a massive a massive freight truck delivery every month or every other week or whatever it is. Your effort goes up, right? Your economies of scale might go up, but your economies of scale also go down in certain ways. So it then becomes this problem of how efficient are you at operation? So I've just avoided that again, where I sell less, but I make really good money because my equivalent rate of paid media, while I could maybe make more money and take the risk, the amount of effort goes up significantly. I'd rather continue to develop this kind of like content-based business where, long term I can maybe pull away from Facebook work, which is what I've been doing for the last 2 years, and my numbers are still going up, and I'm doing less work, and then I have to do less work, and now I'm just fulfilling orders, and that continues to grow. So it's a plus or minus. But if you do choose to run ads, like if you want just the quick rundown, I'm still a firm believer of the ROI behind Instagram, then TikTok, then YouTube. Seems to be where it's at. Maybe Facebook, it really depends on what you're selling. Same with YouTube, right? So I think it's like Instagram, TikTok, and then Facebook and YouTube are the same depending what your product is, and you just have to adjust accordingly. So we've gotten pretty far. You guys have obviously gotten a lot of information at this point, and I understand that it's not as like glamorous, and you are like, you might not be getting as much like oohs and ahs from my editing. I just wanted to deliver information here. I wanted to sit down and truly take this as if I was teaching a class, and when I've taught classes in the past, this is what I generally just try to do. I try to information vomit at you guys. And for those of you that are really actionable and you guys are going to utilize this, it's better to have more words per minute of content coming out of me, or like information that you're going to take notes on and be actionable about. And yeah, so that's basically going to take you to the step of like, your 18 months to 2 year mark. So honestly, probably a good time for me to curtail, the steps of progress. Now, there is something that's even more important than everything that I've just talked about, which we will talk about in a second. But I want to be very clear. What I've gotten up to at this point, you're probably looking at where I just stopped the video. You're probably looking at 1.5 to 2 years of work. And I want to be very clear that anything in between, you have to spend money to speed it up. You want a website faster, you're going to pay someone to do it, right? You want sales faster, you're going to pay the ads to sell it. You want the ease of not having a warehouse, you're going to pay for that, right? And if you have the coffers of money, if you have tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars, go do it if that's what you want to do, right? But if you're like me or every other person in the United States, you probably don't have that. So you have to go through this. But I just want to set the expectation of this is like 1.5 years, maybe a year if you're really on it and you hit your first product and it works. But 1 year to 2 years of work, right? This isn't going to be in the next 3 months you're going to have success. You might, right? Because one of the beautiful things with e-commerce is it's a little bit like the lottery system where you might just hit it really well on your first product or your second product or your third product, and it might take off really, really quickly. But in the same sense, you're going to have some losers. I've got like, honestly, I'd have to like think about it. I probably have 75 or 80 listings on my current site that I stock that that are my products underneath my brand. 50% of them are what I consider losers. They're good enough to sell. My long term, I make money on them, right? But they're not big winners. And then I've got, let's say 10% that I call winners that are really like breadwinners. They're the ones that make the business run. And I would say I have maybe one product that I call my shipping winner, right? And I love the shipping winner where it's like, if a customer buys that product, right? That product is designed and priced so that it's expensive to ship. It's the heaviest thing that I sell. But 2, if a customer buys that product, anything else they add to the cart doesn't cost me anything in shipping and operations. Like my cost to get it to the consumer is almost nothing, which is real money in the industry that I'm in. So I know that every time I sell one of those things, I make a much smaller amount of money on the profit. But in the case, which I always upsell, so I make sure it is almost all the time. If in the off case that customer buys another product and gets it into my pocket, I make $6, $7, $8 more on that order value than I would otherwise, and that ups for every product there. And you might be like, you might be like $6, $7 isn't a lot, but when I'm selling like 2 or 3 of these a day, it could be like $20 a day that I'm getting extra because that one product is designed so that I'm not paying an extra $20 in shipping to get those other products to customers, and those are $20 that I get in my pocket every single day. And if you do that enough, it really starts to add up. It starts to stack up. And that's the way that I look at it, is like when I'm looking at e-com, I'm looking more at how am I filling my day with dollars versus the year. Because with e-com, one of the biggest things that can be like the thief of comparison, but it's really just people not understanding. It's like you see all these gurus on YouTube that are like, I have a business that turns $1.5 million, right? But their take home might only be 10 grand. And that's more common than you'd think. There's a lot of volume where at the end of the day, they haven't done the work or they haven't understood the business case or the business or the analytics, and they're just not making the money they thought, or they're trying to do a lot of revenue at no profit to create brand security, and then they're going to try to upsell something else. But it's really hard to do that, and there's a lot of risk involved. They might also be making content and saying, look, I'll even take a loss. I'll do $1.5 million of business. I'll bring in $1.3 million. I'll lose $200,000, but 1, it's a tax write-off because I'm doing it for content, and 2, I get to go spend 3 years saying I'm an e-com millionaire and teach 1 million of you guys with free courses, YouTube AdSense, all that stuff. It just doesn't really work out, right? So I guess where I'm going here is that like the process is, and maybe like be very concise here, the process is pretty well defined for success. And if you follow the process, it's going to take time and it's going to result in everything that I've kind of talked about. But don't get lost in this, like, this is a, way to cheat the work world, right? You're going to work harder and longer hours doing an e-com than your day job, for sure. 10 out of 10, 100% of the time. There's no way getting out of that. Even the gurus that aren't really doing it will tell you even when they're losing money, they're working more than their day job. That's 100% the case. But the beautiful thing about e-com is I get to do it all from home. I'm like doing it on my own time. More often than not, I'm watching a movie while I'm doing work. Part of me that is ADHD, whatever it is. But you get to control your own life, and that's one of the beautiful things about it. And if you do it really well, you can out-earn what your other income could be, and that's another beautiful thing about it. For me, I've been very fortunate, and I've positioned my life in a way that my salary job pays pretty damn well, right? It would be very hard for my e-com to out-earn what I can make as a salaried consulting engineer, right? Unfortunately, or actually, unfortunately, right? But I've put myself in that position. I've worked very hard to be in that place. But that should not dwarf the case that my e-commerce business covers all of my costs. I do not have any costs. So that means with my day job, I get to take it all home. And if I decided to move somewhere like out in the middle of the country, I could just live off my e-com if I wanted to. So it provides all this power. So you should do it, right? But it's not as glamorous and glorious as everyone's saying. The last thing that I want to talk about, which is probably the most important, and I appreciate you guys if you've stayed this far through the video, is effort and ethics. Because a lot of you guys have watched to this point in the video. If you have, one, let me know in the comment section below, because I bet you about 0% of you have. But if you have, the hardest thing about doing all this, and the one thing that you should take away, is you have to go into this process with an enormous amount of work ethic and an enormous amount of effort. And if you don't do that, you will not find success in this space. There's absolutely no way to find success. You need to outwork every single person. You need to be more efficient. You need to be more autonomous. And the reason that is because this is basically an open market. Anyone can do it. Anyone can compete in this space, right? You're competing against everyone, which means you need to outwork everyone. It's not about fun, like there is some luck involved, but hard work trumps everybody else. And a famous saying that I like actually from a TikTok creator, Andy Glaze, he's this like vegan ultra marathon athlete. He's what got me into ultra marathoning. And he says, like, you'll never find a hater that'll outwork you. And I know that, like, nobody's dealing with, like, haters, but the reality is like, sometimes you can be your own hater and that it's not going to work. I'm not going to find success. Outwork that mindset. And I can promise you guys, even if you're not really good at it, right? Like, let's say your skill set, you're realizing, oh, I'm not, like, exceptional at doing e-com. I'm not exceptional at sales. I'm not exceptional at web design. I'm not exceptional at marketing, right? You can outwork talent, 100%, without a doubt, right? If you outwork talent, you will be more successful. If you put more effort into it and more, just yourself into it, you will find success. And I honestly believe, and I don't really, it's not even a belief system. I'm telling you that this is the truth. And anyone that I've seen that have done it, I've interacted with plenty of people that are in this market, in this world, colleagues and everything. And I will say, I am arguably, and it's not like I'm not trying to flex, I'm just better at marketing than them, right? And it's just because like my entire life has been built that way. It's been something that I focused on for 10 years. But they work 100 hours a week to make it work, and they earn more than me. And I respect that more than anyone could really understand, but they're outworking me. And I still work a lot. And again, if you compare yourself with people that work like crazy, it's harder to do it. But think about everybody else that tries this and they're like, I want instant success, or I'm going to work 5 hours a week on this, right? If you outcompete those people, you're going to put yourself in a position of success. And honestly, if you take the content approach, you're not going to fail, right? But you just have to outwork the failure curve, right? So it's like becoming successful on YouTube. With this channel, right? At the time of filming this, I probably have 800 subscribers on this channel, right? At some point, this channel will have 20,000 subscribers. Am I gonna get lucky? Probably not. I've got other channels with that many subscribers and I've never had a viral video, but I just keep producing content and eventually I get there. And that might not sound like amazing to some people, but it pays for my lifestyle in Boston, Massachusetts. So, you know what I mean? Just hard work will allow you to find success. And that's the only thing that you should take away. Obviously, do everything that I've talked about if you want to be successful, but outwork everyone, and that's it. But I couldn't say that at the beginning of the video because everyone would click off and be like, this guy's like an absolute like lunatic and he doesn't know what he's talking about. But honestly, that blueprint is what works, but you can outwork that blueprint if you wanted to. So if you use the blueprint and you outwork your competition, you'll find the most success in this business. And we're gonna curtail the video at that point. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Feel free to reach out to me. Again, I'm not selling a course here. This is entirely free. I don't have a Discord or anything, but I do have people that will ask me stuff via email, and I'm always happy to give you a lengthy response via email when I have a few minutes before I'm headed to bed or whatever. So if you have any specific questions about your current business or the business you're starting, fire away. I'm happy to answer those questions. So I will see you guys in the next video, and enjoy some of the other free content on the channel.